Realistically, Gen Z, 25% of them are helping with a grandparent right now. 90% of Gen X is who's helping their mom and dad, or 90%.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Silicon Oasis Spotlight. And today I have with me here an awesome guest. Super stoked to have him on. Go ahead.
Tony Siebers.
Tony Siebers of
Parent Projects.
There we go. Now, Tony, you and I met for the first time 4 days ago?
About 4 days ago, man.
4 days ago now.
4 long days ago.
Extremely long days ago. We were at Venture Madness, which is Arizona's longest running VC competition. And we were both finalists. We both placed on the podium. And so Tony was the booth mate. He was right next to us on our left. And loved what he was building. Loved the passion with which he was building it. And I invited him to come on the Silicon Oasis Spotlight. And I'm just glad you're here, man. Thank you so much for coming out.
Oh, it's great to be here. I really appreciate you. Thanks so much. And congratulations to you guys off of the podium win.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Loved being there. Loved what you did. Your founding team, my wife and I were both out there throughout the dinner. She was my plus one at the VIP dinner the night before. And we just the four of us all got along really, really well. And love what you're doing, where you're going. Looking forward to helping you guys too as you take off. And that's really what it's about.
Yeah, honestly. Well, thank you so much. That was so kind. And to that point, right, would love to dive right into what you're building and how you feel about building in Arizona. If this is about, the 6th, 7th episode now, so people get an idea, at least of my background, would love to tell them about yours, Tony.
Yeah, thanks. So Parent Projects is wholly owned by Family Media and Technology Group. That's our holding company over the top. That'll set the tone to understand of what we're trying to do and the approach in which we're taking, right? This is Parent Projects is a platform for adult children that target ICP, or the ideal client profile of using our platform, is a 45 to 65-year-old working mom that's balancing homeschool, work, kids, and man, now they got a parent who needs a little more help today than yesterday, probably more help tomorrow than today, and they're trying to boil the ocean and figure out, what do I do, when do I do it, how does it work? Truth be told, nobody really cares and jumps into this until the moment it's an emergency. And so that's the crux of the problem that we really, that's the user group that we went out there and wanted to start relieving some pressure from. A challenge in the marketplace is both sides of this, right? There is not an easy way, and there hadn't been before Parent Projects, an environment that allowed the businesses that were servicing those families and the families to work constructively and cohesively and together through a parent project, which, we say, if you've seen one parent project, you've seen one parent project. Yeah. Everybody's family is so dynamic and different. You didn't need a recipe book, and you couldn't write an algorithm for a recipe book. It's a choose your own adventure. And we ran at this before the benefits that we're seeing now of reason engines and generative AI and other things like that. So that's our run at it.
Nice. You mentioned that for age ranges between 45 to 60?
65. Yeah, 45 to 65 essentially is who ends up in that crisis getting tapped to help.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there anything preventative? For example, so I just turned 30. Yeah. And I know one day I'm going to be at that point. Is there anything in terms of preventative education materials that you guys have conjured together? Because it sounds like you could build that pipeline for when 45 hits.
Yeah, man. I the whole market wants that to be true and wants you to do that. Crazy. I'm going to tell you this though. Realistically, Gen Z, 25% of them are helping with a grandparent right now, and unlike 90% of Gen X is who's helping their mom and dad, or 90% of those helping Gen Xers helping mom and dad are women. Are that target demographic. 47% of Gen Z helping a grandparent are men.
This is
dynamic shifts.
This is why I love the Silicon Oasis Spotlight. These statistics always blow my mind from what people are building.
Yeah. Right. But it's that problem. And if you're going to solve, Yeah. 20 is already engaged in this. You're already doing it, and you're actually all these things that are problems in the market for Gen Z of, not how they want to work, what their expectation is, work-life balance. These things that aren't clicking really, really well in society, or a lot of times that lead older generations to look at them and see them as lazy or not working hard. Yeah. Well, honestly, it's what set them up, and it's something God's using, I can see, to be there in the right moment to actually help at a time that really makes a lot of sense. Okay. Look, so, I mean, my Christian faith, my Catholic Christian faith plays a huge role in my own life. So there's a couple of things I'll throw in here just to help how I came to understand this. For sure. Dude, not even Jesus went home and was respected when he was trying to get it done at home, right? Like everybody's like, you're just a carpenter's kid, right? Like,
prophet not respected on his own land, right?
Completely, right? So that happens and that plays out when people are helping their parents. There's a lot of dynamics to it, way more than we have time to break down off of this. Yeah. But the reality is failing to understand those dynamics and meet that market where they're at, and instead just speak at the problem, is what the industry's issue was. Now I'm gonna identify the industry. The industry is called the longevity services industry. It's a $7.3 trillion industry. It's operating at next to about a 7 CAGR. Like its growth is on fire. And we are going to go, here's a driving factor of it. It's called a silver tsunami. And this is going to drive tech. It's going to drive everything. In the next 5 years, if you haven't heard that, if you're not familiar with silver tsunami, then you need to check it out. You need to understand its impact on your environment.
Is there a specific source on the internet you recommend for learning about that?
And type that in, and you're going to get it from 1,000 different places to go. The main players that have been there and actually contributed to some of the problems, like AARP and those guys, by the way in which they just kind of tackle stuff. Yeah. Brilliant. They're there. They've got some stuff, but the way they tackle it has created some challenges. They'll talk about it. You'll see the World Health Organization, honestly, is who I started working through and to understand how they see that at a global level. And it is a global phenomenon. Here's the phenomenon, okay? In 2020, we had about 48 million people over the age of 65. Okay, that's important.
That's 5 years ago, right?
That's 5 years ago. It's going to be 90 million in 2030. 90 million. That's almost a doubling. That's the reason. If you look at the bottom of your Social Security statements that we get, in fact, I think they just went out like last week electronically, and then look on the bottom of it. Last year said we have funding to pay through the year of 4037. Full benefits through 2037. 2037. It was the first time there was a disclaimer that it's not indefinitely going to be out there. Like there is 65 is a trigger point. It's just not a random number. It's a number in which our entitlement system, this is money that does not get changed in the budget. Yeah. This is money that's locked into it. Medicare, Social Security, those things all start triggering and working against that. So there's an insolvency to handle 90 million people right now. In fact, the system will be insolvent within 7 years after hitting 90 million if we don't make significant changes, which I think you're seeing a lot of that happen right now.
This is all extremely eye-opening. I mean, obviously, you hear about aging populations around the world in general be largely ignored. All the medical staffing that needs to come with it, right? The technology, how everything's just, I think, being ignored. Right. Maybe you hear people talk about it in trends, but I think very few people are actually tackling it and saying, yeah, maybe it's not a sexy industry, as they like to call them, but it's necessary.
But so this problem hit me just in the nose. In 2015, late 2015, I had a grandmother who was doing awesome until she wasn't doing awesome. Right. And my mother-in-law called and said, "Can you go check on her?" I was bringing together. I was a strategy director for Rural Metro American AMR, the two ambulance companies, and we were bringing those two companies together at that point in time. So, look, I knew the payer system, like I knew how the money moved in healthcare. So I thought I understood enough. The reality is, I don't know how Medicare worked. Like I was waiting for the fairy to come, like sprinkle the Medicare dust over me, and all of a sudden you get up and you start looking at all these other dynamics, which is, I'll in a little bit later, I'll put into perspective, I think, some of the core partnerships that allowed this to happen. But it is the little things. It's the relationships with their kids. It's the isolation that happens when you start losing autonomy for yourself and you can't do things yourself. It is the fact that, you and I both have kids. We're just talking about our kids. I'm sure I'm going to go out on a limb that you raise your kids a lot like mine, and they know the best version of you.
I would hope they do, right? At the very least.
Right. But the reality is, you make decisions based on all of you. When you're deciding how to handle a situation, especially a really complicated one. Our kids don't know all of us. They know the best version of us for first 20 years of their life. And then maybe depending on how our adult relationship with them is developed. But it's all predicated on this, like, the show of us trying to, like, give the best influence on that. I think I genuinely believe, and there's some psychologists out there, whoever you are, call me if you know this, right?
Please,
like, there's a reason why that is, but I think it's one reason why, honestly, the next generation and grandkids, why I was effective, right? I mean, especially with a grandmother who can write me during the war, we could establish this bond, and I'm not her kid.
Right.
I'm an outside person who could help. So once that hit me in the nose, I recognized, wow, I care. I want to solve this problem. I looked around to try to find people who were doing it. I couldn't find anybody that was like making a serious impact. Yeah. And that was where I put my money where my mouth was. And I said, okay, like, I left a phenomenal job that only had up to go. Like, it was everything you'd ever want. And I said, it was my calling. I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. You line up emergency management out of the military, you line up the working out of family offices, you line up just the strategic things. Yeah. If I looked at them all as a series of, like, cones, and this is the same to any founder out there. You want to know if you're onto something that you're calling and you're in there. If you look at your life and it looks like it's disjointed at a series of cones of experiences or education or networks and people that you had, or and all of that looks like that, try go standing at the end of all of those cones and looking right down. And where they're all pointing, if that's headed down to the mission in which you are running at, you're probably going to kill it. Yeah. You're going to be right where you're supposed to be, and your intuition's going to be on.
That was great visualization. I could see each cone as you were explaining it. And not that I've gotten anywhere amazingly fantastic, but my personal experience is definitely a myriad of different jobs, right? I always tell everyone that 5 years ago I was working for my father's construction company, and 2 years later in VC. And between that, I was a pest control salesman, marketer, and again, now chief of staff at a startup and founder of a nonprofit. So again, not saying I've gotten anywhere fantastic, but I could visualize that, and it made a lot of sense to me, because where a lot of people, and I might just be speaking for myself, a lot of people might feel like all these different experiences don't mean anything. Because they're so far apart. Yeah. And once you explain it the way you did, everything kind of lined up. And it builds to where I am today. I love telling everyone that I was the biggest introvert growing up, Tony. Like, embarrassingly introverted. You can ask my mom. But I'd get smacked on the side of the head because I couldn't say hello to my neighbors. Yeah. That's how introverted I was. Yeah. And after kind of raking myself through the fire and coals, right? Latter-day Saint missionary, burning in the sun in construction, learning a little grit there in the 120-degree Arizona sun, door to door, getting rejected every day. It's interesting to see that come too. So I thank you for helping me visualize that, because I know for a fact I'm not the only one who will take a step back and say, wow, all of that was for a reason, not just because I was, aimless, right?
Right. And it's, it's truly not aimless, I think, as you come about. But even if you felt that that's where those things went through, I tell young, and I love working with younger people. Yeah. Right. Those just in that college age, that 18 to 30-year-old sweet spot, I've been leading that generation since I was in the middle of it. I remember I was a lieutenant at 19 years old with 40 of them in a platoon. Yeah. I'm only 19. Half the guys were older than I was, for crying out loud. Right. But there's something about that phase of life when you're going forward. And man, I just remember thinking, if I only understood then that, like, it takes away fear. It takes away, the trepidation of stuff, the second guessing. Like, now you can absorb when people look at you and they say, fail fast, fail hard, like run at that. Like, I'm never going to learn as much from what my dad wants me to learn standing on his shoulders. Yeah. As I'm going to learn from, like, hitting that wall. And now I know why. Like, I've experienced why. I've watched it. I felt it. And yeah.
It's really interesting to see because, and here, because this might sound crazy. At no point in my life did I feel aimless, which is interesting to say. But looking back, you might think, that was a mistake. That was a mistake. That was a mistake. And now it doesn't feel. Maybe I should be paying you for therapy, but no, it doesn't feel that way. Because same way, right? I share a little more of my background. Maybe people might have heard it, but I'm very first generation. Parents came here from Mexico. I knew nothing, right? My older brother, who was kind of supposed to be leading the charge on the United States life, he ended up passing away from cancer while I was on a Latter-day Saint mission, and got home from that mission aimless. I was aimless there, that's for sure. Yeah. So I started at community college, and all I knew was that if you just worked hard and tried to be a good person, fruits would come somehow. Yeah. That was 10 years ago, and I can confidently say that, like no matter where I went, doesn't matter if it was deep blue New York, extremely red Arizona, if you just showed up, made an effort, and tried to be a decent person, most people I found give you a chance. And I now feel it's my responsibility, call it spiritual or not, to push down that same ladder for other people to climb up on it. So, for example, right, I'd like to help founders. As I mentioned, I have 2 more founder calls tonight, and we don't charge anything. This isn't, again, to say, look at us, like we're great. But I personally believe that's one of the big reasons Silicon Oasis exists, is that if we create an environment like this, give first, expect nothing in return, I think that just multiplies. I truly do. That might be naive.
No, look at the things that we're tackling they're insanely complex problems. Like look in the marketplace in the problems that we're solving for one of the biggest challenges that seniors are facing, and why you've got to bump that down to 65, or why you're looking even at a pretty dang young age, right? Is because of how technology is moving. We're on a 45-day innovation cycle right now, and technology and innovation tends to be oriented at who's spending money.
Yes.
Retirees are not. They're in asset preservation mode. And that's a group of people who have spent 70 cents on every dollar for the last 4 decades. Yeah. Like they've driven spending, and now all of a sudden they're like they're pumping the brakes after what happened in the housing crisis in 2010. They're barely recovered from that. Now they're watching what's going on right now. It's only precipitating that. And then, you look at my dad, like my dad won't carry a cell phone. And never has, just doesn't like it. Yeah. And that doesn't want to be tethered off of that thing. Well, now it's hard to get on an airplane. You can't change a cable bill unless you have a cell phone. Like they send you the contract. You've got anything that's opt-in, two-factor like check-in, right? Yeah. Think about that. Think how many things you do that require that. So take that out of the ecosystem for somebody who doesn't have a text message. Yeah. Holy cow, man. So when I learned about the silver tsunami, not only had I been punched in the nose, but so I'm standing over, I've got this law enforcement background. Yep. And so when I go into my grandma's house, I go to grab her some clothes, and she's at the hospital. First of all, she didn't have an advocate, so she was waiting on a test that she probably should have gotten 2 days before, but they knew she'd pay the bill. And I'm not going to, I'll honor the absent on how all that went down. But she didn't have an advocate. Right? She needed an advocate to walk her through that. I'm walking through the house. Everything from the knee level down is no man's land. And I'm putting that together. I'm like, wow, man, this is actually, I never even paid attention to this until I'm paying attention to it. Yeah. On her dining room table, it looked like she was picking colleges because she put her name into a couple of websites, and it shotgun and sold her information to all of these places, which made it, and I went through that as well, trying to help her. And it was so overwhelming. I was like, well, that doesn't work. That's not helping. Then I noticed that people were taking advantage of her fraudulently. I saw the same stack of the same greeting cards, like 5 versions of the same greeting cards, and it turned out to be a not-for-profit organization that had multiple arms, realized that she would write them the check, and then they send the greeting cards, and they just pounded her from these different directions and got her to do that. And so then I was back, I was with Catholic Charity in the board there. And we got to talking about with the Foundation for Senior Living that's here in the Valley. They were talking about the silver tsunami, and they're like, yeah, man. And as this hits and this washes ashore in the U.S., imagine the impact to the last, lost, and least of us, and especially those that are aged and are really super vulnerable. And I knew it, man. It was like a light went off in the back of my head, and I was like, yep, I got it. I'm on that problem. I don't know what it looks like at the time. I got rid of sold stock and stuff. I did everything that we had to do. We had started, my wife and I, we'd started law firms and we had started other businesses. So I know how to do that. I'd always lifted up other entrepreneurs and had invested myself in it as an angel. Yeah. And I decided, okay, now I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this here. I went in, I spent like 2-3 years actually kinetically touching, tasting, feeling this. I started a business that was working move management. I exchanged information to understand what it felt like in different regions of the country. Yeah. Like I gave mentorship to these other move managers that were struggling. And then in exchange, I got to see the business and how that worked. And I realized, oh, this is not going to be easy product market fit. It's going to be regionalized product market fit. It's going to look different in Boston than in Portland, than in San Diego, than in Phoenix or Sioux City. Yeah. So like those things, as I started mapping that out super quickly, then we come down to trying to learn what being a startup entrepreneur from this standpoint looked like when I was an intrapreneur. Right. I'd started so many businesses inside a boardroom or testified to Congress and pull down, an 8 or 9 figure budget and be accountable for it. I could do that. But now all of a sudden, man, the politics or getting through the ecosystem in Arizona, which is where I know when I travel the country and I tell people where I'm from and that we're solving this problem for me, everybody's like, well, of course you're solving that in Arizona. Of course, that's where an aging problem gets worked with, right? That's where everybody goes to get old. So it just makes sense. I remember being at a tech crunch and had some early opportunities to go to Silicon Valley and to work. But at that point in time, all the coastals wanted everybody to come to me. You got to come move out here. You got to be in here. And I remember thinking, man, I can't leave. I walk out my door and I'm dripping in my problem. Mm-hmm. And as a founder, because here's the top lesson that I learned in SaaS as a founder is that unlike being an entrepreneur where you build a product and then you go out and you sell that to market, you just dump and push cash behind it. Mm-hmm. You need to build that MVP and then you need to build a team who is amazing at listening to your clients tell you what it really needs to look like in the end. And you need to iteratively work that flywheel. Yeah. And so, I think I know people like the software and they use the software and it helps families and it's doing everything that I wanted to, we wanted that to do, but I still think it's ugly. Like I know where I want it to go and I know what I want it to do and it can't get there fast enough. And there are real families in line for that. So, that's a piece of it. I love what you guys are doing to the ecosystem. Oh, yeah.
Thanks. Loved hearing about all of that. Again, I just love learning so much about everything that's going on. To that point, right? You mentioned wanting to stay in Arizona because you're literally dripping in the problem. We felt very similarly at Inked Greetings, where it's like, look, this is our home turf. There's a reason we're building here. We feel we have a competitive advantage here for various reasons. How have you felt the ecosystem here, receive the idea on the business side and also just in the tech ecosystem side?
Okay, so general, I'm going to say once you've crossed $1 million ARR, I'll be really generous. Yeah. You cross 500,000 ARR, the ecosystem's going to walk in. It's going to pay attention to keep working off of it. Yeah. That right now is the threshold to cross to even to raise and seed in the area. Can you do it outside of that? Yeah, I should hope so. And we're going to try to work off of that. If there's a box to check, you work through it. I've found we're with Startup AZ. Okay. Phenomenal organization. I wouldn't be here today without that organization. It gave me the ecosystem of companies, particularly the peer group, which wasn't overly taxing, but was a place that you just let it go. Like, hey, I'm struggling off of this, or I've got to exit a co-founder, or I've got to do this thing. Like you immediately, these are the boxes you normally check. And what's more importantly, you have these folks that have been there, done that. That's great. Yeah, and so they're there to affirm the grit and the risk that you're telling, right? I'm going back to my board and I'm like, listen, we're going to grit this and this is what we're going to do. And the board at this stage, right? They're like, Tony, what you tell us to do, like we're going to do. Like this, you're the fact that you've seen this and where it is what we believed in, and I've got $1.5 million sitting back behind us of just gritting through and understanding and pulling together where the problem was and building the ecosystem to get going to this point. But the reality is to really move, it's not even as much about the money.
Yeah.
It's about showing, well, my network, which I had to pull from out of state. I have pulled into the state over $1.5 million and invested it in Arizona, got it invested into an Arizona company to keep doing this and to do, right?
Congrats.
I mean, that is, you don't think about that up front.
Yeah.
But that was, and they know this is a place to come and that we can do that. Now what we need is that ecosystem to grab that and to give that fertile soil so that it doesn't feel like the concrete or the sidewalk where the seed gets planted. It can be a great seed and where it goes off of all of that, but you've got to have the fertile soil there. They have to understand how they work together. If there's a process, someone just needs to be clear, and they need to get that out to as many people as possible to let them accelerate. And I find a lot of people willing to give those calls and to talk to you through and to figure all that out. But the reality is, now we as a group, we want to see Arizona step in. Like we want to see Arizona want to have an Arizona unicorn. Do you want to see this? Do you not want to see this? Like, here we go. This is a problem not only we're solving off of its own right, its impact and reducing the risk to, oh my gosh, man, or even the impact we can have against the cost of healthcare, the entitlement system.
Yeah, more problems than one. Yeah, you're right. Love that you brought up the fact that we're trying to look for that unicorn in Arizona. I say very proudly, maybe a little overconfidently, that I truly believe Inked Greetings is going to be the next one. And people usually don't speak that way about their own startups out here. Yeah. And my thought is, why not?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, if you're looking to raise VC money and you say, well, maybe, like, the point of every single venture fund that's ever existed at the early stage is to return the fund, right? Any fund, actually, at any stage. But if you are an early stage fund, right, you have that risk of 1 out of 100 could hit, 1 out of 20 could hit, and you're a winner.
You're talking about, too, the business of that. Yes. And that's important. Like, that's not something that enough of the founders understand going into it. No matter what the VC, like when I walk in, I had that conversation, and I remember I have a business. Right. I got to sit on the other side of the fence here when we'd pick up companies and acquire, right? So some of the M&A side, but like maybe a couple of the gold nuggets if you don't understand as a founder. Number one, if you don't know the funds that you're talking to, where they're at in their fund cycle, like let's say you know you need 4 years, you need 5 years to clear, and they've got 3 years left on their fund, and they don't know what they would flip you into afterwards. Like that's just not nothing against them. That's just not a mix. Move on, get to the next one. Love it. Where do you pick up stuff like that? Yeah. Where does a founder go to understand and start finding that connection, or to understand what the business is? They're in the business of making money on money. They have such a period of time to create that return. They got a $1 million fund and they're writing $100,000 checks. Or they got a $10 million fund, they're writing $10 million checks, right? They've got 5 years, they're going to pull off, whatever their fee is going to be for the first 5 years off of that. And then it's going to, like understanding the business model of that and to know their business is not yours. 100%. They don't sell greeting cards, right? That's not what they sell. And they're not going to help on the parent project side off of that. Maybe at best, they have a portfolio company that, man, you plus them is co-opetition. It's going to make both brands more powerful or more valuable into the marketplace. That might be the closest you really start grabbing from that. But where do you learn that?
Yeah, I guess it's like it's not common. There's a lot of, and I always say venture is a bubble. And I forget that I'm still in the bubble. There's a lot of things you assume people would know just because you spend a lot of time around it. And it's just not a thing. For example, this is one I do try to share, but I advise founders to stay largely away from any check, just any check that exists. Yeah. Because sometimes the smallest checks from people who have nothing to do with your industry are the most annoying, troublesome members on the cap table. Yeah. And it's like, don't just raise from anyone. You should be strategic. And to your point, right? If a fund hasn't even closed their fund yet and they have no money to deploy and they're prancing around the valley saying that they write
because they've got an image to stand up in order to go raise their next fund. Like it's a real business thing there. Yeah, man. And as a founder, look, we just did Venture Madness, right? That was 2 solid days of time in which we're on the ground. We're working against that. And there's, in preparation from that, several days to prep up and to work. That is time I'm not with my client.
Correct.
I'm not on the line. I'm not doing one of the most valuable things my company needs out of me to do this. Now I'm doing it because I need to raise capital, and I knew I was going to need to raise capital.
Right.
Now that we've hit the traction that we've gotten where we're running, I know I have to grow quicker than where that's going to come in. I need more than just capital. I need talent. Right. I need proven talent of people who understand how to manage the pace of what's about to come at us. Yep. I have this for our particular company. You learn as a founder, you get laser focused and you try to tighten that up as tight as you possibly can to build your first use case to get up that you reasonably can build a replicable product market fit. Yeah. Right? Product PMF means nothing if it can't be reproduced again and again. In my nature, I understood it's regionalized, which meant I can't go market by market by market and figure it out that way. I can't do a Toothio thing, or I can't do what some of these other guys have done. Mom and dad live here, and kids live in 25 other places than here. Yeah. So that was a part of my problem. That's just a part of my issue as you work through those problems. So that scale, as I'm prepping and you're starting to work from that, I need someone who can open the door and really connect me to talent. I need people smarter than me, and I'm going to work myself out of a job really quick. Nice. Because I'm great at strategy and good partnerships, and I can see the tea leaves. I am a neurodivergent brain. That's how my mind works, right? And it was good in emergency management. It works well here. I should not be the CEO of this company when we go to flip on. I'm going to find somebody who just gets this or works this 5 years from now when we decide to go as a multinational to serve the 340 million in India that are doing just in India alone, who are doing this for the first time because mom and dad stayed put and they picked up the Western ideal of moving for work, which we've been doing since the 30s. Mm-hmm. And you've got now that challenge, that whole new dynamic going on for them where they've moved abroad and mom and dad didn't move with them. Those are real challenges against that side. I will need somebody who's done that, right? I need to surround myself with people smarter, faster, more experienced than me. And that doesn't come, you can't network your way really easily to that fast enough. Yeah. But you also can't waste a ton of time because I'm trying to do that. I don't have a lot of time to waste with funds that aren't that. And if you're not investing in age tech, and you're not working at that, I love you. I'll be your friend. Right. Yeah. I'll keep an eye out of who you're looking for, and if I see a network off of that, man, I will never feed you garbage. Right. My LinkedIn, I've literally sat down and had this conversation with everybody I allow to connect. Everybody else, we just work as a follow, and I send an immediate message when someone goes to connect. Like, hey, I used to break bread with everybody. I'd eat with everybody. Nice. That I'd stick hold of those connections. I want that authentic, real network. And so, if you're not a match for me, that's awesome. And I see somebody else send them in that direction. But on the other side, I don't have time to spend on those things, Yeah,
I think a lot of founders in Arizona, and this might be a hot take, they're obviously building, they need to build fast. They need to scale fast because a month in startup world is years anywhere else. Yeah. And from what I've heard, they've shared with me that some of the funds that promise to deploy capital don't move as fast.
That's right.
Or they don't even have the capital.
I hear it all the time.
Okay, cool. I
hear it all the time. Yeah. I hear it all the time. And there's a lot of reasons. And I probably because of how I can, because my first and second life and career, I get into those conversations with people sometimes, and I'm not looking for money from them. I just want to understand the dynamics, right? In that, I get it. People didn't clear the sheet. Here's a problem I see in Arizona. Yeah. And if people aren't talking about it, we should talk about it to either dismiss it and move it along, or understand. And it is this: we are betting and building on a massive B2B SaaS niche, right? On this SaaS niche, it's where we want to go. Any great fund that sits out there has taught in the coastal areas to be careful about pinning themselves up or oversaturating themselves in any one particular area. Right. Man, so you can't go all in against one side. You've got to have an ecosystem against that. They're going to need natural spread in order to secure them so that they don't completely collapse if we have look at what happened down here with the trades and everything that fell apart when the housing market dropped out here in 2010.
I was going to give the example of crypto 3 years ago.
Right.
Crypto funds by the biggest funds in the world just completely, 20% deployed, and then they have just another 110 million sitting there.
Yeah.
Because it was hype. There are some real crypto projects, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But I mean, to the degree with which we treated them, no, right? So
No, and you see a lot of that too in the generative AI. Well, actually, look at the whole run of it there. Yeah. Right. Look at what they did on the LLMs, and as soon as it went out, I was like, man, what are we running at that for? It's just inevitably going to get commoditized.
Yeah.
Let the big dudes go off. They'll go run all of that. Here's where it means something to you and I. Yep. Technology is in that innovation cycle again. I'm seeing it like 45 days, 60 days. Yes. There's a monstrous change there. The money I see out there does sit in the wrappers and the apps. It's the building of the wrapper companies and the app companies that sit around, right? I have several different apps. We're using agentic flows that move between the apps, and we wrap it cleanly in brand that meets our client where they're at. Yeah. People build that. Okay? There is... it's scalable, it's nimble enough, and it's not something, I could tell you from being in corporate strategy of the big companies, we can't move that fast. Yeah. By 45 days, I can barely get all the committees together of all the stakeholders to actually get a green light against something, and that's for a project that sits under a dollar threshold of a couple $1,000,000. Yeah, And so they're not going to be able to do that. But if you look at the way that the U.S. economy has always worked across history, it is these boom bust cycles where there's this everything pulls together, and then boom, everything fragments. And you see all these startups that start going when things get tough and austerity sets in, and startups and people bootstrap the stuff. And then what do? They start getting acquired, and they start bringing them and pulling them all in. That is a good indicator to me of some predicated activity that I see these companies will do that again. It also helps that many of these companies are led by former military officers and always have been. Cool. Like me, the military, the Army is the nation's oldest business, right? Yeah. And it's 1770s. How do you fund any mission you go off of? You've got your personnel department, you have your future operations department, your current operations and training, logistics, you've got civil affairs, and like every problem plans that way. And so those military officers tend to do well when they come out for big companies and structure. So I can understand how the big company and structure works from that. But what they can't do is move fast enough for us. And so in our startup ecosystems, I don't need to build a company that itself is going to be the full operation of the $1 billion, and I'm going to create every piece of that pie. Yeah. I can now trust that somebody's going to see the competition and they're going to pull me in. I'm going to get acquired at some point in time, and that's going to allow me to go to a gear that is bigger than my brain. Yeah. And hopefully I maintain the humility in life to see that and to recognize it when it comes.
No, that's great. I mean, just from what you've shared on your personal life a bit, even before camera started rolling, it seems like you, from what I've been able to observe, right, you like to learn from each lesson that you're presented in life. And I don't think a lot of people do that, right? I mean, I think we have lessons given to us and we don't always take the things that we can from them. But just from knowing you a short amount, it seems like you not only like to learn from them, but then share those teachings as well. So I commend you on that, Tony.
Oh, thanks be to God. Like, seriously, I'm given those experiences because I'm curious about them, I think. As long as I stay curious about them, that's what God's asking me to do and to learn and to work from it. And, man.
I can very much confirm from my end that is the vibe that you give off. So
okay,
if that's what you're going for. That's very much.
Everybody looks. I hope when you come in, it's one thing that I hate. That I hate's a bad word from that, but there are thousands of hours of content that we've had to put together to make this work, and so I've spent a lot of time having conversations with people to pull out their knowledge and to work with it so we can get it into the platform to help a family. That's the crux of what we do, right? I don't want to be the face off of those things. Literally, I'm telling you, the back of my mind is I want to be the most effective person that ever lived that nobody knows who he is.
I love that.
And it's hard to do from this perspective. So that's another reason.
That's funny because when we have events and stuff, I actually try not to be in the photos. So it's the same difference. And I actually learned it from this same kid I keep talking about and who I learned this whole event tech thing from. His name's Andrew Young, based out of New York. He does tech events out in New York City. Okay. But he won the tagline, right? They named him the Gatsby of Silicon Alley.
Huh. Yeah.
And that's
Manhattan. Yeah, that whole
Yeah, and that's because he'd throw events and just dip. Like, he just let people do their thing there, and he'd just go into a private room with his friends and just hang out there.
Chocolate, scoop of vanilla, don't waste my time.
No. Essentially, right? It's just, you just have this event, and
that's phenomenal, man.
That's cool, right? Like,
it's more than cool. It's what's needed. It is something that's needed in these environments because you don't like. I want to bring together those thought leaders that are thinking through that side. That's the whole crux of my platform is just that. Some family member cannot consume 16,000 hours of content. And the place to do it and the time to do it is not when they're death scrolling Instagram. Right. But unfortunately, that's where everybody was kicking and pushing all that all that content. We just need to reorganize that into the right place at the right time. And that's what I see you guys starting to set up for here in Arizona, and particularly in Phoenix. But I really do hope also, and over time I expect we'll get a chance to do some of this stuff. Yeah. I learned from my Catholic Charities work that the outlying areas the state is full of gold. It's full of silver. I mean, that's what built the state in the first place, right? And copper, right? Yep. Copper, silver. But really there is so much up in the corners of the state and in these other areas to draw out and to pull into all of this. And this is a medium, I think, that can start that and probably start pulling back together.
That is our hope. We love Arizona. I always say to everyone that we talk to, we hope you never meet anyone who loves Arizona more than we do. And if you do, send them our way, right? We want to see what we can do for Arizona. But ultimately, we love the tech that is being built here. A lot of founders out there that have raised impressive funding rounds, not from state, sadly, from in-state, but they're getting the job done. They have customers, they have a working product. Most recently, right, we had a hardware founder who bootstrapped to profitability in hardware. We have amazing people, and we want to keep finding them. Again, if you're watching this, please reach out to us. We would love to feature you. But I know our time's coming up here. I loved our conversation, Tony.
It's great. It is the top reason for you to, bring your startup here. This is a place to do it. You do have good people. The labor market it's difficult to kind of find, but there are ways to do that and to tap the people that are coming out. Particularly right now, I think what we've got a good synergy for and what we're working hard to build are those folks that understand how to lead and work with agentic flows as a part of their repertoire. And whatever it is they do, we'll be building a lot of that out. This might not. I don't know that the investment circle is there and that the money flows the way that we as founders, when we sit and talk off of it, it's there. Like, we know the data. There's a talking point, but then we all know what we're seeing and what works. So we're having to bring that in from outside at this point in time. But all that aside, there's a reason that we're succeeding here. Yeah. And that is because there is this grumblings in the right place. It is fertile soil to do it. It's a place that wants to see problems solved. Yes. And I think that is super important. They want to see these problems solved, and they want to see these problems solved here. And is a great place to lay that down. It's like when if you're going to launch a restaurant, you take it to Wichita, Kansas. Yeah. I don't know if you know that. It's like that is where you launch a restaurant concept. And Wichita, Kansas knows that that's what they do. Like, everybody in Wichita, Kansas knows, oh yeah, if there's going to be a restaurant, it's going to come here and we're going to test it. And if it lives here, it lives. Yep. Right? If it dies here, it dies. I'm telling you, this is that great place on that tech side from that avenue from it. But we'll firm up the rest of it. I think he's gonna figure out.
No, that's great. Arizona wants your problems.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. And come solve problems in this environment. We got a great mix for it.
We shared it on another episode, but someone asked us why is it called Silicon Oasis, and I realized then and there, because yes, we want to see it thrive and it is an oasis, but more than that, we want people to come and stay. We don't want you to come and do Arizona. Right, you do New York, you do SF. Yeah. We want you to come and plant your roots and bring problems and solve problems and find more problems and then make it the best thing that you and your future kids and generations, right? A true oasis for them.
Dude, how crazy is that? Because a lot of us, outside of your co-founder, 6th Gen, right? But few people, one of the running kind of jokes off of this is nobody's from Arizona, right? But it is that melting pot that I think is the strength of why you get the ideas, you get the dynamics that comes around. Sure, it totally messed up. You used to move here if you had tuberculosis because you didn't have to deal with allergies and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And then everybody brought their favorite dogwood tree out of Wisconsin, right? And now that's all the pot, right? Yeah. But that said, that mixing and that movement, as well as maybe the organization that comes from a gridded environment and a hold down to, it's got something worth preserving and holding on to as a state and recognizes that. Yeah, I think that's what allows it to keep working. And
this is going to sound extremely wild, but right now, as you're mentioning all of those things, I'm imagining Arizona as kind of the new port of immigration and innovation, right? What New York was 200 plus years ago, 300 plus years ago. Arizona is now a place where you can raise a family, come work, innovate, do a lot of things. Yeah. So, yeah, that's wild. I stand by it.
I support you with it. There we go. Yeah, every step of the way. Yeah, I'm looking forward to working and serving in our community with you side by side for years.
Love it, Tony. Any last parting message you'd want the listeners to know about, hear about? Where can they find you?
They can find more about us at Parent Projects, plural. So any of your favorite socials, any place you're hitting, you're going to find us in that way. We're holding that space out there. Yeah, and it is that time. If you've got an aging loved one and you feel that you are just out there and you are on your own, gosh darn it, you are not. If you are in business and you are trying to juggle that, or you see it coming in with everything else, you are a business, let's say, that also helps families. You feel that your business can help other families go through those situations. Man, check us out at parentprojects.com. We're looking for you. You're exactly the type of business leader that the families are looking for as well. So let us connect you and pull everybody in.
Loved it, Tony. Thank you so much for coming on today.
It's a blessing. Thanks for having us.
Of course. All right, everyone. See you next time. Cheers.